All right, ladies, this one's for you. Spring is here, and we all know what that means, diet season. I know that weight loss can be a touchy subject for many of us, but I've got a story to tell that might surprise you. It's a bit unconventional and, well, a little gross. But trust me, it worked like magic for me. A little background on me. I've always struggled with my weight. From elementary school onward, I was always the chubby girl, not morbidly obese or anything, just constantly carrying around 5 to 10 extra pounds. That may not sound like a lot, but it was enough to make a difference, especially when it came to dating. I was never ugly, per se. In fact, I could clean up well when I wanted to, but that extra weight always seemed to hold me back socially. I loved to party, be around people and have fun, but my body always seemed like a barrier. No matter what I tried, no-carb diets, all-fruit diets, veganism, even some pretty dangerous things like chewing and spitting food or starving myself, I just couldn't lose the weight. It was so frustrating. Fast forward to college. I'm in a biology course and we're doing a unit on parasitism. Yeah, I know what you're thinking. Parasites? Gross! But as we're learning about them, I have this light bulb moment. Could parasites, specifically tapeworms, actually help with weight loss? I mean, if they're feeding off your nutrients, wouldn't that help you shed pounds? I started digging around online, reading forums and doing my own research. And well, I found out it wasn't as dangerous as it might sound. From everything I read, it seemed like there were two main complications people ran into. Either they ate more to compensate for what the parasite was taking out and ended up gaining weight, or they left the tapeworm in too long and it ended up exiting in a very unpleasant way, sometimes leading to a hospital trip. But I was determined to find the sweet spot, the right balance where I could lose weight without serious complications. After weeks of research, I had a plan. The trick was to starve the tapeworm out before it grew too large while still maximizing weight loss. I know this sounds crazy, but bear with me. You can't exactly hop on Amazon and buy a tapeworm, so finding one was my first challenge. It took a couple of weeks, but eventually I posted a Craigslist ad and finally got a lead. I had to meet a sketchy guy at a rundown motel to get the tapeworm eggs. Yes, it was creepy, and yes, the guy was a bit of a perv, but I figured it was worth it. I took the eggs right then and there, which felt super weird, introducing a parasite into your body on purpose. Gross, right? But at that point, I was determined. The first few times didn't take. My body rejected the tapeworms, and I had to meet up with the guy twice more to get reinfected. It wasn't until the third time that it finally worked. I knew it had taken because I had been obsessively checking with tests I stole from my biolab. By that point, we had finished our unit on parasites, so no one noticed the missing supplies. So where does the magic weight loss come in? Well, it doesn't happen right away. It took a few weeks for the tapeworm to settle in and start siphoning off nutrients. And trust me, you will feel nauseous at first. The morning sickness was so bad that I kept a trash can by my bed to throw up in as soon as I woke up. But after a few weeks, the nausea passed. You'll want to start taking vitamins immediately. I also cut way back on calories, probably more than I should have, because I was paranoid about overcompensating and feeding the parasite too much. I figured as long as I was taking multivitamins, I wouldn't get too malnourished. And honestly, it worked. There was a point where I started to lose some hairs, probably because I wasn't taking enough vitamins, but I added more protein powder to my diet, and it seemed to help. I never ended up with any bald spots, so it wasn't too bad. Here's the thing about using a tapeworm for weight loss. It takes time. You won't see immediate results, but after a few months, the weight really does start to melt off. For me, it happened around the 5 or 6 month mark. By then, I had dropped 20 pounds and I was feeling pretty good, but that's when things started to go wrong. The tapeworm had gotten too big and I could feel it. It wasn't just a minor discomfort anymore. It felt like something alive, moving inside me, growing. I knew it was dying though. And when that thing starts to die, it wants out. I skipped class and locked myself in the bathroom. The nausea returned worse than ever, and my entire body was shaking. After what felt like hours of excruciating pain, I felt a sudden pressure, and then a gush of fluid. It was like my body had just broken, and the water was everywhere. That's when it happened. The tapeworm, this pale, twisted thing, started to slip out of me. I was horrified. It was larger than I had ever imagined, and I realized just how close I had come to a serious medical emergency. Once it was over, the relief was almost immediate. After the tapeworm was out, I felt lighter, not just physically, but mentally too. The last of the water weight dropped off within a week, and after a couple more months of healthy eating and vitamins, I was finally able to get back to normal life.
I woke up at 4 a.m. thirsty. As I shuffled toward the kitchen, I noticed a light spilling out from Ethan's room. It was strange. Ethan was usually a deep sleeper. I paused outside his door, worried by the unusual glow. As I peered inside, I saw my son standing motionless by the window. "Ethan?" I whispered, trying to rouse him. He didn't turn around or notice me. Instead, he continued to stare out into the dark night. Suddenly, he turned to me and said, "It's time." His voice was a chill ran down my spine. I tried to shake it off, convincing myself it was just a dream or a minor disturbance. I walked back to bed, but I couldn't sleep. The strange words echoed in my mind. "It's time." What did that even mean? The following night, I decided to keep a closer watch. As the clock struck 4:13 a.m., Ethan was once again standing by the window, his silhouette as a ghostly figure against the night. I was about to approach him when I heard it, a soft, deliberate knock on the front door. My heart raced as I hurried downstairs, but when I opened the door, there was no one there, just an empty porch in the moonlight. The next morning, I questioned Ethan about the odd occurrences. He looked at me with wide, innocent eyes and claimed no memory of getting up during the night. It was unsettling, but I had to admit that children often have peculiar dreams. Night after night, the routine persisted. At 4:13 a.m., Ethan would stand by the window and the knocking on the door would start. Each time I'd rush to check, only to find nothing but silence. Exhaustion wore me down, and I started dreading 4:13 a.m. One cold night at exactly 4:13 a.m., as I watched from the doorway, Ethan raised his small hand and pressed it against the window. I froze when I saw a hand on the other side, mirroring his. The fingers were long, skeletal, and blackened with decay. The skin was pale and waxy, like someone who had been submerged in water for too long. Panic surged through me. I reached out to pull Ethan away, but he collapsed in convulsions. I scooped him up, cradling him in my arms as the room filled with a chilling, familiar, distorted voice.
We can be together again.
It was Marie's voice, my wife who had died a year ago. Marie had suffered from a rare autoimmune disorder that made her body decay while she was still alive. I carried Ethan downstairs, my heart pounding with fear and confusion. At the foot of the stairs stood Marie, or what looked like her. Her skin was rotting, her eyes sunken, and she wore the dress we buried her in. Her limbs stretched and twisted in unnatural ways. It was her, yet it wasn't. Her mouth twisted into an eerily grin.
I've come to take our son home.
"No!" I screamed, clutching Ethan closer. "You're not taking him!" Desperation clawed at me as I fled back upstairs, Ethan in my arms. I slammed the door shut and hid by the bed, my heart pounding. Ethan, barely able to speak, said in a trembling voice, "Daddy, Mummy always comes at 4:13 and wants us to be a family again." My mind was spinning. I accidentally looked up and saw a photo of 3 of us hugging each other. April 13th, the day Marie died. How had I not realized it before? Fear seeped into my bones as the door exploded open. Marie's twisted form slithered through the bed, her eyes glowing with a sickly yellow light.
Found you!
She hissed, her voice like nails on a chalkboard. In a desperate attempt, I opened the window to climb over to the roof, trying to escape the house. The air was frigid, and a feeling of hopelessness washed over me. "Ethan, we need to go! Now!" I shouted, pulling him close. But as I turned to climb, Ethan's small hand clung to mine. "Daddy, no! I want to be with Mummy!" My heart broke. "Ethan, listen to me! That's not your mother! We need to get out of here!" Ethan's grip tightened, his eyes filled with longing and fear. "Please, Daddy! I miss her!" Before I could argue further, the temperature in the room plummeted. Marie's grotesque figure emerged from the shadows, her smile twisted into something both horrifying and triumphant.
Ethan! Come to Mommy!
She crooned, her voice full of malice. Ethan's eyes lit up with a mix of fear and longing. He began to move towards Marie, and I felt a pang of despair. "No!" I screamed, pulling Ethan back with all my strength. "Stay with me!" But Ethan broke free from my grasp, running into Marie's cold, outstretched arms. She embraced him, her face contorted in a sickening smile of victory. Marie's limbs wrapped around us, pulling us both into her icy, hard grip. The window, once a beacon of escape, now sealed us in with Marie's chilling embrace. The last thing I remember was Ethan's terrified face turned calm, his eyes locked on me with a mix of love and fear. And now, we're a family again.
This is my first night shift at G-Zoo. My usual job is to observe and take care of the animals here at night. To be honest, this job is quite boring. I just sit in front of a screen and watch them sit, stand, or walk around for hours. I look forward to 8 o'clock so I can feed them. At least I get to go outside and breathe some fresh air. It's strange that there are no other staff here besides me. Maybe not many people are willing to work the night shift. But for me, I agreed because it's an easy job with good pay. Somehow, today the deers look more energetic than usual, constantly hopping around. Hey Tiger growled and the camera No 8 went off, startling me a little. It's probably hungry, time to feed them. Both my hands are carrying heavy buckets of meat. I take the food to the tiger and toss them some red meat. But the tiger just lies there, not even bothering to eat. I get closer and see the tiger lying on its back in a strange position. I smell the stench of blood and start to feel uneasy. I try to stay calm, but it's too dark to tell if the black stripes on its skin are blood or not. Then I notice small bite marks on its lower belly. Suddenly, I hear the sound of banging on the enclosure door and the screeching of the gorillas. I immediately run over, thinking the situation there might be more serious. I run over to the gorilla enclosure. One of them is writhing on the ground while the other two look terrified. I approach the cage, open the door, and step inside. The writhing gorilla starts to mutate, growing two sharp legs on either side of its back, like spider legs. Its teeth are razor sharp, and its green eyes gleam with madness. Then it lunges at me. Fortunately or unfortunately, another gorilla jumps over and takes the bite from the mutated gorilla instead of me. I stagger back, in shock and unsure of what to do. The bitten gorilla starts to mutate as well. Its body swells unnaturally, and its limbs sprout extra fingers with long, sharp claws. The sight is nightmarish. Seeing the madness in the gorilla's eyes, I knew I was facing something far beyond my control. I quickly run out of the enclosure, locking it behind me. The mutated gorillas rush to the door and trying to grab me, but I step back, just in time. Their strength is no joke. This enclosure won't hold them for long if they keep ramming into it like this. When I first saw the tiger lying there, I sensed something was wrong, but I never imagined things would get this bad. I realize I can't handle this situation alone. I need to report this to Dr. Morgan. I never thought this job could become so horrifying. The sounds of banging and screeching behind me and the haunting green eyes make me feel like I'm trapped in a horror movie. I burst into the lab, breathless and desperate. Dr. Morgan, the gorillas, they've escaped. Dr. Morgan looks up from her work, her face pale. We need to act fast. The vaccine isn't ready, but we can slow the mutation process. We grab as many vaccine vials as we can and head out into the zoo. The plan is to inject to the animals and hope for the best. But as we step outside, the scene that greets us is a nightmare. The animals have escaped their enclosures, and their mutations are more evident than ever. The giraffes' necks twist like snakes. The limbs of the crocodile became larger, sturdier, and elongated, making it move faster. From both sides of the elephant's neck, tentacles of an octopus began to sprout, moving eerily through the air. The gorillas are the worst. They move with terrifying speed and agility, their eyes gleaming with malevolent intelligence. We split up, trying to cover as much ground as possible. I head toward the zebra enclosure, hoping to inject the vaccine into them before they mutate further. The zebra's stripes swirl into chaotic patterns, their bodies twisted and contorted. I give an injection to the first zebra, hoping the vaccine will take effect quickly. But as I move to the next one, I feel a sharp pain in my leg. I look down and see a deer who has mutated with its claws digging into my skin. I scream and kick it away, but it is already damaged. I can feel the mutation process starting. I inject myself with a dose of the vaccine, praying it will work. The pain is excruciating, my vision blurs, and I stagger, falling to the ground. I try to stay calm, but the fear keeps rising within me. And as I feel the mutation process beginning in my body, I know this fight is beyond my control. I know my time is running out. Dr. Morgan's voice comes through the talkie like a faint glimmer of hope. Paul, hold on, we'll fix this. But I know it's too late for me. All I can do is hope that the others can stop this epidemic before it spreads further. The last thing I see before everything goes dark is the zoo in chaos. The mutated animals causing havoc and Dr. Morgan's desperate face. The silence of the night is shattered by the sounds of chaos and horror. And I know I've become part of a nightmare with no escape.
Just keep calm, babe.
I woke up with a sharp pain shooting through my back and shoulders. My entire body felt like it had been through a fight, but I couldn't remember anything unusual happening during the night. As I struggled to sit up, I noticed the dark bruises blooming across my skin. I had no memory of falling or hurting myself in any way. "Stephen," I called out, my voice trembling. He rushed into the bedroom, concern etched on his face.
What's wrong?
He asked, his eyes scanning over the bruises on my arms. I showed him the marks. "Look at this. Did something happen last night? I don't remember anything. Stephen looked just as puzzled as I felt.
No, nothing happened. I was right here beside you the entire night. Are you sure you didn't fall out of bed or something?
I shook my head, feeling more confused than ever. I hadn't moved from the bed, that much I knew. Stephen helped me get dressed and we decided it was time to see a doctor. The doctor ordered a full set of tests, checking everything from my blood pressure to potential vitamin deficiencies. When the results came back, everything appeared normal, except for one thing.
You tested positive for nitrazepam,
the doctor said, frowning at the report in his hands. That can't be right. I've never taken any kind of sedative in my life.
Are you sure? It's a strong drug, typically used to treat severe insomnia or anxiety. You haven't been prescribed anything like that?
I shook my head, my mind reeling. No, doctor. I wouldn't take anything like that without knowing. He looked concerned but didn't press further. When I got home, I saw a small pile of papers on the table. Stephen had left some of his things scattered about after sorting through bills and documents the other day. Then something caught my eye. A prescription slip, crumpled slightly at the edges. My breath hitched in my throat as I picked it up and read the name. Stephen. For a moment, I felt a pang of concern. Could Stephen be struggling with some kind of ill? Why he hadn't told me? Maybe he'd been suffering in silence, trying not to worry me. But why? Curiosity gnawed at me, and I decided to search online for more information about the drug. As I read through the details, my heart began to pound harder. The dosage prescribed to Stephen was far higher than what was typically recommended for mild insomnia. It was the kind of dose that could knock someone out completely. The most surprising thing to me was that the main ingredient of the drug was nitrazepam. An unsettling thought crept into my mind. Could Stephen have done this? Was he drugging me? The idea seemed absurd, but I couldn't shake the feeling. The way he had looked at me this morning, calm, almost too calm, left a knot of unease in my stomach. I sat there staring at the screen, my thoughts spiraling into darker places. Was I just being paranoid, or was something far more sinister happening right under my nose? That night, as Stephen handed me my usual cup of chamomile tea, I hesitated. I could feel his eyes on me, waiting for me to take a sip. My heart pounded in my chest as I forced a smile and took the cup. But instead of drinking it, I waited until he left the room and poured it down the sink. I knew then that I needed proof, something to confirm what my instincts were telling me. That evening, after Stephen had fallen asleep, I set up a small camera in our bedroom, hidden among the books on the shelf. I needed to know what was happening while I slept. The next morning, I could barely contain my anxiety as I reviewed the footage. For the first few hours, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. I watched myself sleep peacefully beside Stephen. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding as the footage played out. My body, twisted and unnatural, crawled up the walls like some kind of grotesque creature. My breath caught in my throat as I watched. Stephen woke up looking up at me without a hint of surprise. He reached under the bed and pulled out a stick, using it to fend me off as I lunged at him from above. For the next hour, the two of us wrestled violently, though Stephen seemed to be the only one truly fighting. Finally, he managed to pin me down and cuff me to the bed, his face a mask of grim determination. The marks on my wrists suddenly made sense. The bruises, the pain, they were all because of this. I had been attacking him in my sleep, possessed by some force that I couldn't understand. I hadn't known. I hadn't realized it wasn't Stephen hurting me. It was me. Whatever dark force had taken over me at night. Tears streamed down my face as I rushed to find him. "Stephen! Stephen! I'm so sorry!" My voice cracked as I called for him, but there was no response. I searched the entire house, my heart racing faster with each passing second. The kitchen was empty, the living room quiet. "Stephen!" I screamed louder, panic rising as my voice echoed through the empty rooms. Where could he be? I checked the bathroom, the study. Nothing. The house felt unnervingly still, as if I were the only one left in it. My stomach twisted with fear. Something wasn't right. Then, I remembered the bedroom closet. I hadn't checked there yet. My hands shook as I reached for the handle, a sickening feeling growing in the pit of my stomach. Slowly, I opened the door. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was the monster.